guys. Hi. Oh, applause. Wow.
Hi.
Great stuff. So, got high-tech stuff here. Makes me very nervous. All right. Good. Okay. Great. So welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. And we are being live streamed. So thank you to everybody who's also watching. I am Miata Edoga, and I am the Financial Wellness Counselor here for the Actors Fund Western Division. And I love talking about money, particularly when it comes to money and artists. You guys all have our bios, so I won't go through and tell you about us. You can read them. But I am an actor as well, I'm sure, like many of you. And I think that really one of the biggest keys to being able to go after what it is we're going after with strength and joy and power is solving that money question, right? So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. Now, before we dive in, just a couple of things, which is that I do want to really thank our friends at the SAG Foundation for this wonderful room. Isn't it an amazing room? It's a great room. And also for making the live stream possible, because this allows people who aren't able to be in the room with us today to see it. But more than that, it also allows you to watch it later, or to watch bits of it later, which means I don't want you to feel like you gotta be writing down every single word, right, and capturing. Like, really use this time to see what tips and tools we share that might really help you in your life. You guys down here in the comfy seats, don't want to forget about you. Now let me just ask, so that I know, is anyone here really new to the Actors Fund and the programs that they offer here at the fund? Yeah, some of you. Okay, great. So the Actors Fund is an incredible organization, and I just really want to encourage all of you, if you're not, to start taking advantage of the incredible programs that they offer. The name, the Actors Fund, is a little bit of a, I don't want to say a problem, but a misnomer perhaps, because the Actors Fund is for everyone in entertainment, right? The Actors Fund for everyone in entertainment. So it's not just for actors, producers, writers, makeup artists, everyone in front and behind the camera. And there are essentially four arms, okay? They have the Social Services Department, which offers emergency financial assistance, also offers counseling, groups, support. We also have the health insurance arm, right, which helps you get coverage, the coverage that you need. There is the Actors Work Program. Anyone here taking advantage of the amazing programs that the Actors Work Program offers? Oh, not a lot of hands. You guys have to. I mean, that really is in sync with what we're going to be talking about today, because the purpose of the Actors Work Program is to help you find the ways to make money that support you while you are continuing to build and grow your entertainment industry career, okay? And then, oh goodness, what's the arm that I'm forgetting? Insurance. Oh shoot, anyone? Social housing, thank you, yes. That's a great, yes, housing. So a low cost and affordable housing for artists. And I just encourage you, visit the website, see all of the amazing programs, classes, services that are available, okay? But the part that I'm a part of is the financial wellness department, right? And it is about creating financially stable, and then beyond that, financially thriving entertainment professionals. And what I have found in the years that I have been a financial wellness coach is that there are really two sides to it, right? There is the work that we have to do. And I'm going to talk to you about what is the work that we have to do to be financially stable creatives, right? But then there's also that other piece, which is the what is stopping us from doing the work that we have to do, right? Because there's something that has us come sometimes to workshops or read books, right? Who's picked up a money management book, right? And to get inspired. So we get excited. But then we go away, and after the workshop or after we finish the book, our excitement and our inspiration starts up here, but then it's kind of a slow path down. And that comes from all of the stories that we're telling ourselves about why we can't do the work that we learned. Kristine and I have been colleagues and now friends for many years. And as a transformational coach and change strategist, which is what she is brilliant at that other piece, which is now you know what you have to do. What is it that is keeping you from doing it? Okay? Because if we can plug the money leaks in your lives, right? And that's the physical money leaks, the money that is physically draining out of your pockets and wallets and bank accounts, and also solve those mental energy leaks when it comes to your money, then you become unstoppable, right? In terms of handling your financial situation in a way that allows you to be a strong, creative professional. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what you're going to get today is a lot of transformational content. But transformational content doesn't create transformation. Transformation only happens when you apply the content to your life. And that's why having a plan of action is great, but if you don't actually apply it, it's not going to do anything for yourself. But then you have to look at, well, what is holding me back from applying it? Because I don't think anybody here in this room today hasn't heard some of the stuff that we're going to, yeah. And we say, oh, yeah. But then it's really like, but what are you applying to your life to make you feel better? So the transformation happens with you, and what we're going to look at today is what might be stopping the application and give you tools for how to bust through that. And the reason you need two of us here is because the greatest plan of action needs a way for you to get in alignment with it. And when I talk about alignment, it's not really woo-woo. It's really, is what you're thinking about money in alignment with what you're saying about your money, in alignment with how you're feeling about your money, and then what you're actually doing. And if you do Miata's plans, but you're feeling like, oh, I don't know, this isn't going to change anything, I'm so bad with the numbers, and then you're thinking to yourself, well, I feel frustrated about this, I feel disempowered, so I'm not sure this is really going to work, and am I ever really going to get money? And then because you're so thinking and feeling those things, the stuff that comes out of your mouth is like, oh, I can't afford that, or oh, it won't ever work for me, or oh, life is unfair, some people, you win the lottery. So what we want to do today is give you tools to bring you into alignment, so the stories that you're telling yourself make you feel good, so you can actually start saying, not just to yourself, but also to other people, a different story about your relationship with money, so that when you do the things you do, it will actually work. Because no plan, when it comes up against a story that's disempowering, it doesn't have a chance. Right. It really just doesn't have a chance. And so when clients come to us, they want to make big shifts. That's what we help people do. Miata helps people make big shifts out of a money situation, but I really love it because her sweet spot is when clients come to her who have just got a lot of money, an inheritance, a windfall, or they've booked their series and now they are having to deal with money inflow on a regular basis. That's awesome. So they need plans and they want to make a shift of what they want to do with the money or how they want to approach the money. And then people come to me because they want to make shifts in their life or in their career, go in a different direction, or go to the next level. So when anybody comes to us and wants to make a shift, one of the first things we look at is, okay, to make this shift, we're going to need resources. We're going to need you to have some time and energy and money to put towards making this shift. So where are we going to get that from? We're going to start looking at, okay, where are you leaking out the time and the energy and the money?
And the money.
So we can start plugging those leaks so that we can then create this reserve that we can put towards you making the shift to the next level. And the exterior leaks, time management, cancel those 18 magazine subscriptions and that money that's going out there, and exterior energy leaks like physical energy. Okay, well, get more sleep, better nutrition. You know, we all know how to plug. It's easier to see, and there's a lot of guidance already out there on how to plug those exterior leaks. But where I have found, hands down, that my clients certainly are hemorrhaging out the majority of their energy, mental leaks. And most of those mental leaks, most of the biggest mental leaks certainly, are in the area of money.
Money.
So today it's about how do we find our leaks and how do we plug them so that you have more resources, time, energy, and money to put towards achieving your dreams. Because that's the point of all of this.
Right?
Yeah.
You said something great, which is you said your relationship with money. And that's really what it is, right? We have to have a relationship with money.
Good relationship.
And that's the key, right? Like, you may be sitting there thinking, yeah, I've got a relationship. But, you know, it's the same thing as sort of any other relationship in your life. If it isn't healthy, if it's toxic, if you're avoiding it, right, then the relationship doesn't work. And you don't really have to raise your hands, but I just want you to think about how much maybe you have said, oh, as soon as money comes into my life, then I'll have a relationship with it, right? And the thing is that it sort of becomes a chicken and an egg thing, where the relationship isn't coming until you really show that you're ready to have it, okay? So the first piece to that, and you guys have worksheets so that you can follow along, and the one thing I do want to say just about the mic here is there may be a couple of times throughout the next couple of hours where some input, we'll be asking if anyone is willing to give some input, okay? And so at that point, you would approach the mic. And the only thing I have to say about that is if you approach the mic, you will be on camera, okay? So you're just agreeing to share, not just with us in the room, but with everybody who may be watching. Fair? All right, great. So the first piece that we have to look at is, where am I exactly, right? Where are you financially right now? And this is one of those questions that may bring up a real sort of knot in your stomach, because a lot of us feel like we don't want to know, right, where we are financially. But what I want you to imagine, who remembers, I think it was like second grade math, where they taught us that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, right? They teach us that? But in order to draw that straight line, I've got to have 2 points, right? So we're nearing the end of the year, which is a great time for all kinds of reflection, right? Looking back on the year that has passed. And this is really the time where, what do most of us do? Lots of resolutions, right? Lots of commitments about, I'm going to the gym every day this year, right? Or I'm going to lose X number of pounds. Or in terms of our money, this year I'm going to make, everybody fill in their own number, right? Or this year I'm going to eliminate all my debt. Or any of those this year I'm buying a house, or I'm getting a car that works, or any one of those goals that we may have. And the thing is that that's point B. And that's amazing, to establish and decide your point B. But most of us are trying to do that without really figuring out what's point A. Where are we? Not kinda, sorta, where we are, but where are we actually, okay? Because I don't care if your point A is way the heck over in, I think I'm pointing east right now, downtown, and your point B is at the beach, okay? Or your point A might be here and your point B here. We can chart a path. You can get there. Will you need support, answers, some guidance, a map to get you from point A to point B? Sure, but we've got to know, okay? So what are the steps to establishing your point A, right? The first thing that I'm going to ask all of you to go away and do is essentially create your financial filing cabinet, okay? So that is where you're really going to get organized in terms of all the financial paperwork in your life. Okay? Now, who's still a paper person? I'm still very much a paper person. Okay, great. So a lot of us are still paper people. Yeah. Like, I always joke in my classes that, every time you get a physical bill, they will write on it, save a tree and get it electronically. And I always feel really bad, but I can't do that. Because if I get it electronically, I won't pay the bill. Like, I have just realized that about myself. If I don't actually have the paper, it doesn't get paid, okay? So whether you're a paper person or you're an electronic person, financial filing cabinet means that you know where your information is, okay? And so what you want is a system. Now, your filing cabinet doesn't have to look like yours or like yours or like mine, okay? There's no absolutely right way to do it. The only thing that I will say is that piles are not a filing system, okay? Shopping bags, huge boxes under your bed with papers and receipts. I see some nodding happening here. That is not a filing system, okay? So those of you who have taken classes with me before, you know my rule for a filing system is that if I show up at your house and I ask you if you could just pull out the last 6 months of your bank statements and maybe the last 3 or 4 months of your credit cards, and if I said, and how about gathering all of your 2014 tax deductible receipts, okay? If he can produce that stuff within 5 minutes or less, he has a filing system, okay? If my arrival at the door creates mass anxiety as he runs around like, oh, can I get you a cup of tea, while he's like gathering stuff under the table and I think maybe in this pile, that's not a filing system, okay? Now, why does it matter? It matters because all of that chaos, that feeling of piles, of not knowing where things are, that is keeping you from your full potential financially, okay? I want you to think of it as, and I don't say this in any way a patronizing way, think of it as growing up financially, okay? And that means you know where your money is. You know what's happening with it. You know where the statements are. Because whether you have this much money right now or this much money right now, right? You have to know where it is. You have to know what's happening with it, okay? And all of the work that you're now going to start doing around your money will be much easier done if you actually know where stuff is, okay? Don't count on the sort of, oh, my bank statements, I can download them anytime, right? Download them each month. Have a file on your computer that is for those statements. Because who's ever actually needed to go back and get a statement that was more than 6 months old and discovered that, oh, you actually have to now pay a fee for that statement, okay? So we want to save you that and actually download them and have that information, okay? So that's the first piece. Now the second piece to knowing my point A is that we all need to get really familiar with our average profit and loss, okay? Now, many of you may think of a profit and loss as being something that big companies have, right? But you are going to really start managing your money like a business, like a company, because that's what you actually are. Knowing how much money happens to be in your bank account right now tells you nothing about your financial situation, okay? And that's something that a lot of us have been depending on. I used to think, oh, if I balance my checkbook, then I'm basically financially organized. I'm basically on top of my financial situation. And that's not true, okay? Because all that my bank balance tells me is how much money I happen to have at this precise moment. Does that really allow me to plan, right? Not really, okay? And that's one of the toughest things for all of us as creatives, is the feeling that we're on this kind of roller coaster when it comes to our money, okay? So what we have to do instead is we need to know what is our average profit and loss, okay? And all of us have the ability to do that. So here are the steps to doing it, okay? What I'm going to ask you to do is those records that you've now filed and they're neatly away in a place that you can find them, I'm going to ask you to go back and gather 6 months worth of your records, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to go through very specifically, and later we'll talk about resources that are available to you completely and totally free of charge, because that's the other thing that I think I forgot to say at the beginning about the Actors Fund. Everything is available to you for free, right? So this is all stuff that you just have to reach out and grab. But so the key is going to be really looking at how are you spending, okay? That's the loss part of your profit and loss. It is your monthly expenses. And so what I show students how to do is that you're going to go back through 6 months, and you're going to go back through with a very detailed list of all of the different ways that you spend money. And let's start with a really easy category, like gas for your car, right? Because we do a lot of that here in Los Angeles. So you're going to go back, and for 6 months worth of statements, you are going to write down every single time that you put gas in your car and how much it was, okay? Then you're going to add up all of the times that you got gas. You're going to divide it by 6, and that is the average amount that you spend in gas on a monthly basis, okay? And you're going to do that with all of the categories in your life. Now, and we're going to talk about all the things right now, like I always feel when I explain this process, there's always a little bit of hostility that starts to grow, right, in the audience. And everyone's faces, like before where I was getting smiles, now I'm getting like these scowls, this kind of like, yeah, okay. But first of all, guys, there are 5 or 6 categories like gas for your car that happen a lot, right? Where over 6 months, you're gonna fill like a whole sheet of paper with the number of times you got gas. Gas, groceries, eating out probably, you know, restaurants, snacks, that kind of thing, maybe the 99-cent store, right? Like those, you're gonna have 5, 6 categories that are like that. Many categories would take you 5 seconds. How much do you pay for your rent every month? You write it down. How much is your car insurance? You write it down. Your health insurance, right? Most of these things, so like before you really get angry with me, right? Just remember that there are some categories that are going to take you some time, okay? But the vast majority of them are not going to. This is the most important work you can do, all right? I'm going to say it again. The most important work that you can do is figuring out, on average, what does it cost me to live every single month? Bless you. Now, where we get stung, okay? We get stung with things like the car breaks down, right? Or any of those other things that we call emergencies, okay? I want us to stop looking at the car breaking down as an emergency. It's going to happen. Your car is going to break down. It's so upsetting, right? It's really, I wish, I keep waiting for the car that doesn't, but that is going to happen. So what we need to figure out is how much did it cost you to repair your car last year? How much did it cost you? Because do you guys realize if it cost me $1,800 last year to repair my car, this year it's going to cost me at least $1,800 to repair my car, right? Which means that $150 a month is what it costs me to repair my car. And I have to start including that $150 in what is my average monthly loss, okay? So that's the reason for going back 6 months. And then some of you are going to look at some of these categories and you're going to have to go back even further because maybe your car didn't break down in the last 6 months. Right. But if you look at that category and you say, oh yeah, auto repair, that's a place I spend money, well, then you're going to have to go back further and do a little investigation and say, all right, so how much am I spending over the course of the whole year? Okay? So that's the loss piece. The income piece is a little bit easier. You really just look at what has been your average income, okay? What has been your average income? Now, all of us as creatives, this is a place, the where am I exactly in terms of your income, that the best thing you can do for yourself is to separate out the emotion from the reality, okay? That's also extremely, extremely tough, all right? But what I'm asking you to do is to simply get the number. What is the number of what is currently coming in? The best place to start is if you have another source of income outside of your creative career. That's probably a little bit easier because you can look back, you can get really clear, how much do I earn doing that, okay? Then look at your entertainment industry career. And I'm sure in this room we have such a wide variety, but you're going to look at that with a little bit more distance and just say, what is so right now, okay? Understanding that that's not what is necessarily going to be so a week from now or 6 months from now, okay? So don't attach massive emotional, like, oh, I'm a failure or anything like that when you look at that number. You just want to get clear on what it is. We take your average monthly expenses, We subtract them from your average monthly income, and that gives us your average profit and loss, right? Or your average monthly cash flow. There are going to be three possibilities. Some of you are going to discover that on average, you are earning more than you spend. Great place to be, right? And we're going to be talking later about so then what, okay? Some of you are going to discover basically break even, right? Basically exactly what's coming in is what's going out. Also extremely useful information, because now you have the ability to really make some choices, both in the ways that you're spending and in the ways that you're earning, to adjust that number in the positive direction. Some of you are going to discover that on average, you are spending more than you're earning. Hugely powerful information, okay? It's what we are afraid of finding out, but once we know, we can change it, okay? When I did this work for myself, when I started this process, which now is about 17 years ago, I discovered, when I did this piece that I'm asking you guys to do, I discovered that on average, I was overspending by $1,153 every single month, okay? Never forgotten it, never forgotten the number, $1,153. You may think, weren't you ready to sort of crawl under the covers and never, ever come out, right? It was, guys, one of the most relief-filled moments of my life. I have never, ever forgotten it, because at that moment, all of what was going on inside of the fear and the knowledge that things were not good, it was like, okay, there it is, right? There it is. Now I know, negative $1,153. Wouldn't you agree that when I got to negative $500 a month, that was progress, right? Yeah. Negative $250, negative 100, break even. Oh my God, dance party, right? But guys, when I'm wandering around and I don't know what that number is, I can't do anything with that, okay? So understand that finding that number means that you can do anything, okay? The last piece of your point A is just your net worth, where you are going to add up everything that you own, all of your assets, right? For some of us, that may be a very short list, right? But it's going to be your car. What is its current value? If you own a home, what is the current value of your home? If you have any stocks or retirement plan or anything like that, that's on the asset side. And then the liability side is, what do I owe? Okay? And again, I want you to be ultra specific. This is where you want to go out. If you need to pull a credit report if you don't know. You want to remember every loan from mom and dad and your brother and your friend, right? Let's just get it all down. What do you owe? Your net worth is the sum total of what you owe subtracted from what you own. Again, some of you will have a positive net worth. Some of you will have a basically zero-sum balance net worth. Some of you will have a negative net worth. Doesn't matter. What matters is that we know, okay? So this question of where am I exactly is a question that you've got to have the courage to ask and to keep asking, right? We want you to learn to set up systems so that this work that I'm asking you to do now, that you have it systemized in a way that you will then know the answer on an ongoing basis, okay? And that's all stuff that we can work on in additional classes. But it brings up a lot of feelings. And so let's look, there we go, at the feelings, right? So what are the stories that we are telling about why we cannot or are not doing this work, okay? We've put up some of the most common ones that Kristine and I hear, okay? There are others. A big one that I know I had was doing this work is going to take me away from what I love. It's going to really take me away from my focus, from what's important to me, okay? So all of these are our stories. And what we want to ask you to really take a moment to do is to record. What are your stories? What are the things that are keeping you from taking a clear and direct look at your numbers? I don't want to look at my numbers because, okay? Write it down for yourself. You've got worksheets. I don't need to look at my numbers because. And this is the place to get really, really honest, all right? Because if we can't be honest with ourselves about this, that's going to be a major hurdle in allowing us to move forward. So what are all the voices that you had in your head about why this Miata person, what she is telling me to do is nonsense, or I can't do it, or I won't do it, or it doesn't make sense? Really get honest about what that is.
Yeah. They can take a minute too.
Yeah.
Just sit with that for a second.
And write that down. And
Yeah.
if you're watching the live stream, you guys also have your worksheets. So take a second and write down the answer to that. Because then when Kristine dives in with some of the tools, you won't just be doing it theoretically, right? Let's really do it. And our goal is that you'll take this away and now be able to apply this to all of your stories.
Yeah. And if one of these is your story, that's fine, just write that down. So I have to say that it makes my heart do a little flutter to hear Miata when she talks about this stuff because for 15 years I was a professional organizer. So I also helped my clients know their number in a certain way. I could take them to a certain point, and that's actually how we met, is because we were sharing a lot of the same clients who kept going, do you know Miata Edoga? Yeah, you should know her. And indeed, I should definitely know her. But I have my seminal money moment when I really had to stare down my number was a little different than yours, because I am naturally an organized person. So I was always diligently every month tracking my stuff and making sure, paying my bills, good citizen. But at the time, I was an actor. I acted for 10 years. So that income is like this. And then I was just starting as an organizer, so that income was very sporadic. The first year of organizing, I made $1,793. I have that little chart. I cut it of my accounting thing and put it on my wall just to remind myself.
Wow.
We all start somewhere, And to me, that was evidence, though, of that it's possible, even though it was a little. So I believe in little numbers, too. So I was organizing, acting, and then I also had a day job. So I was working at a theater. So that income was a little steady. However, it was also under the table. Yeah. So at tax time at the end of the year, the first year I was working at the theater, I was like, oh, I have to pay taxes. And that hadn't really entered my consciousness on that money, the fact that nothing was being taken out of my paycheck.
Right.
And I had not been putting 15 or 20% away every month. And in sort of a really interesting, ironic thing is that the tax bill for that year was almost exactly to the penny, half of what I had in my life, so in my bank. And I was sitting there, and it was a moment of like, well, what story am I really going to tell myself? Am I going to try to like cheat out of this and not do it? But the story in that moment, even though it was frightening, part of the thing that was in my head is like, oh my gosh, how I'm going to just be, my financial worth is now just being cut in half instantly.
Right.
With no real like, how am I going to suddenly recover from that,
Right.
you know? But the story that I decided, the story that made me feel more powerful in a very disempowering moment, was that I'm in this for the long haul, and the type of artist and business person that I'm going to be is one who's above board and who pays their taxes. So if anybody ever had a qualm with that, I could sit across the table and say, you know, I've done it the right way.
Right.
But writing that check was not easy. Mailing it off was even harder. But it was one of those moments that stuck with me forever because it was a real reckoning of how are you going to handle your money, you know, here. So, you know, been there, worked through that. So, stories. Here's the thing about how we feel. We feel because of the thoughts that we're thinking. Thought comes, we feel. And sometimes that first thought is so instantaneous we can't even see it. We're just flooded with fear or nervousness or anxiety and feeling. But what happens is we keep stoking that feeling with the thoughts. You know, you get in those thought loops, or everything you're saying inside your head is these stories that are really, really making yourself continuously feel bad. And when you feel bad, it's hard to take action.
Right.
That's the point. You have to start telling yourself, being able to tell yourself stories that make you feel good so that you feel empowered enough to take the action that will then change your life. But taking that action is so hard, especially when it's things like write a check for half your net worth.
Right.
And if you have a story going on, you may never write that check. And that leads you kind of down a different path in life. So, underneath the stories, I won't be able to emotionally handle what my numbers will tell me. I can't look because I won't be able to handle it. Now that's a story. And you're telling yourself that story because underneath there is a fear. And my fear was always like, I'm going to end up a bag lady. And not just a bag lady, but the image of bag lady was like, and everyone will get to see it because I'll be out on the street with my grocery cart. And that is like, for my mind, was a picture of total humiliation.
Right.
You know, and so that's this fear, and so we tell these stories, and if we can really look at the fear and then really admit we're just telling ourselves stories. Our whole life, everything in your life, everything in our lives is just big stories that we tell ourselves. And that's great news, because if you're telling yourself one story, you can just tell yourself another story. The problem is we've called our stories beliefs, because they're a little thought that has drifted across our mind. We've grabbed onto it, held it, dwelled on it, calcified it, and now it is a belief. And we have spent hours, we've sent our mind off, go get proof that I'm right
Yes.
about this, proof that I cannot handle my money. And our mind is like, okay, our minds are like little dogs. What do you want me to go get? Proof that you're, okay, no problem, it'll run off. And it has built us this beautiful pyramid of gorgeous gems of proof of why this story that you're telling yourself is right. But the amazing thing about the mind is if you go off and say, get me proof for the opposite of that story. First, your mind will be like, what? I just built you this big pyramid, and why don't we just sit here for a while and admire my handiwork? Why do you want me to? But eventually, you can send your mind off to go fetch proof for the exact opposite of your belief. And if you can find one piece of proof, you can find two. And if you can find two, you can find three. It'll be a slow build because you've been working on this one for years, probably. But it starts to loosen up this idea that this is actually so true. And then when you start to play around with, these are just stories we're telling ourselves, so why not tell ourselves stories that feel a little bit better, that make us feel a little more empowered? And very often the stories we tell are about the stories about our past, but you don't know what the future brings. Even that story, oh, I don't know what the future brings, could be told like that, or yeah, I don't know what the future brings.
Right.
Same story now, just two different tones to our story.
And let me just ask you, because I feel like for me, initially this sounded very similar to affirmations, right? Like where people would say, you know, Miata, just think positive. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm broke and $40,000 in debt. Can't really think positive about that, right? But this is different. And I really want to make sure that we're...
Great point.
For input, so, because they can't hear you. We will have places where you'll be able to come up to the mic. Okay, so we'll have places for that. Great.
But that's a really good point, because we're not talking about affirmations. And the thing, it's not that affirmations, they're just a tool, by the way. And it's not that they don't work. It's that they don't have the power to make your story shift because there's no weight behind them. It's like, all my money is being taken care of and everything's going to be fine. Abundance is headed my way. But you haven't built a pyramid of proof for that. And your mind is like, BS.
Right.
Because I just built you a pyramid of proof of how that's not right. So you have this story and you send up a little affirmation and it's like, nope. It's not strong. It doesn't have the emotional weight. So what we're going to walk through are some tools of how you dismantle your story and create a different one that has the emotional weight. Because you can't go, okay, I now have the awareness that this is a story I'm telling myself. I'm just not going to think that thought. It'll go away for a second, but if there's a void, it'll be like, it'll just fill right. Oh, there it is again. Okay. So you need an equally powerful story so that when this one comes back, because it will, you can be like, and then it'll come back and you do it again. And it'll come back and you do it again. I don't care if you have to do it 100 times a day in the beginning, but that's what you do. And then it'll come back and and then it'll calm down a little bit. And then it will just be like, hey, remember me? And you're like, yeah, I remember you. It never really goes away, but you have much more powerful stories, and you have the muscle of thinking of those stories and plugging them in place when the bad ones want to kind of come up. Okay. So here's the thing about a story. Let's take one, for example. Let's use the old chestnut of, I won't be able to handle what I see if I look at my numbers. So this is a story you're telling yourself. And it's soothing. It's self-soothing. It's like, well, don't worry. You don't have to handle it. It's okay. You can't handle it, so you shouldn't. Don't put yourself through that. So you're soothing yourself by telling this story. But if you look at your tool sheet, the first tool we're going to use is called hidden beliefs.
So you have to jump forward a little bit, guys. The tools we'll be using for each section. So if you jump forward to page 10, Kristine's going to show you how to use the tools.
Oh, I wrote it. Let's use this example because I actually wrote it out already.
Great.
Okay, save us some time. So it's another old chestnut. Getting a day job will prevent me from being an artist. So there's hidden beliefs that you're gaining. Hidden benefits that you're gaining from keeping that story alive. And sometimes you're like, what? No, hidden benefits? Oh, they're there. And it's really important to identify what those are. And they can fall into 4 categories. So this idea, this thought, getting a day job will prevent me from being an artist. Well, what's an emotional benefit you get if you believe that story? Well, I can label my lack of income as artistic integrity. I may not have a lot of money, but I have my integrity. I have not sold out. I do not work for the man. I am an artist. And when I say a physical benefit, that usually means, well, what don't you have to do? If you keep that story alive, well, you don't have to do the work of going to get a job and then doing a job. It's like, oh, well, I can't do it, so you don't have to do it. A social benefit of keeping that story alive. I'm usually not expected to pay for stuff when I go out with friends and relatives because I'm a starving artist. But I'm one with integrity, so they feel like they want to pay for me, and it all works out. Now, I'm not saying that there's a little part of you that feels guilty about that or whatever, but we're just identifying that this benefit is something you are getting from keeping that story alive. And an ego benefit. Well, by fully devoting my life to my art, I feel special and brave and like a true artist. I'm not saying that's not true. And by the way, I'm not even saying this is good or bad. Thoughts are thoughts. You have good thoughts, you have bad thoughts. Are your thoughts working for you? Right. Are they making you feel good? Yeah. That's what I'm concerned about. So it's not judging your thoughts, but it is a hidden benefit to your ego of, well, if I don't have a mundane, regular, boring, cubicle day job like all those other people out there, I'm special. I'm an artist. So by taking the time to excavate these hidden benefits of your stories, you now know what you have to give up if you're going to change your story, which is why affirmations don't usually have the heft, because it's like, I want the flow of abundance to enter my life, but I don't want to give up all this stuff. So you have to really decide, I'm willing to give up these crutches, these hidden benefits, to get a more empowering story.
And be willing really to admit it, right? Like when what was the one, let me take a look, the one where you say, the ego benefit. Like, I know that doing this work was what was really hard for me, was admitting the ego benefit, whatever that was with what I was looking at, right? Being able to say, and at first, we're not suggesting that you have to stand up and tell us all what your ego benefit is, right? But that feeling of, oh, wow, yeah. Like, it's like writing that about myself can feel a little bit uncomfortable, but just let it all out there, right? Yeah, this is what's true.
Yeah, definitely. So when you've uncovered and admitted and shone the light on the hidden benefits, now we go back to your story, which is getting a day job will prevent me from being an artist, and we go to the second tool, which is flip it for proof. So we're going to flip that story around to the opposite. Getting a day job won't prevent me from being an artist. And you go send your mind off to get proof of how that statement is true. And you might have to wait a while. But you will be able to do this. Any resistance is just your mind resisting and going, pyramid, the old story is better. It's like, no. How is it true that having a day job might help me to be an artist? You might meet somebody at that day job that will lead you to the next area of your career. The peace that you have from having the steady foundation of income might boost your art, might give you the mental space to be even more creative. You'll be able to invest in your art in different ways. So it's just telling yourself these stories of like, yeah, I want to be someone who can invest in my art. I'm going to open myself up, and who knows, I might meet somebody at this job. I don't have to have this job forever. I'm going to be an artist forever. And if I am truly an artist, who can take that away from me but me? I'm not defined by a cubicle job. I worked out of college. One of my first jobs was working at a Xerox copy store back in the day. And it was a mom and pop store, so it wasn't even like Kinko's. And I looked like I was still in high school, so everyone assumed I was still in high school working at this job, which is great when you have your college degree working at that job. But I was never a Xerox copy girl. I was an actor who happened to be doing some Xeroxing right now. And that's a whole different mindset. Because whenever you're trying to make a shift, especially in a job type of thing, you don't want to define yourself in the job that you're in. Oh, I'm a Xerox copy girl, and one day I'm going to be an actress. You want to go here and look back at your day job and go, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing now, but I am an actor. Because that's the energy that's actually going to get you to where you want to go. And, oh, I just had another idea. That'll come back. I lose thoughts sometimes.
Me too.
Happens. So you want to flip it around and start collecting and challenging yourself to find proof that the opposite of your lovely story is actually just as true. And now, when you've uncovered the hidden benefits and what you have to release, and you've proven to yourself that the direct opposite is just as true, you're a little more loose and a little more ready to form a story, which is tool number 3. Create this story that is just as emotionally grounded as your first story. So getting a day job will prevent me from being an artist. Is getting a day job is a symbol that everyone can see every day of my commitment to being a financially stable, successful artist. That's just one version. You find your version of that story, so you have it at the ready for when your old story comes back. And you might be looking at that list and going, oh, I have 4 of those that are actually my stories. Do this with each one. When you go through the tools, use the tools with one thought at a time to deconstruct it. And if you have a lot of thoughts, you might need an afternoon and a big mug of tea to kind of deconstruct all of this stuff. It's just the same as taking the afternoon with your even bigger mug of highly caffeinated coffee to go through all of your numbers. So these are just deconstructing and really looking under the hood and seeing what's in there. But that's what's empowering. And we're going to come back to these tools, and you can see how they'll apply to each of the 3 segments we're doing today.
Great.
Great.
So then, right, let's see. So now you have discovered where you are, right? You've done the work. You've figured out where I am exactly, right? And you then get the answer that says, I need more money now, right? I need more money now. Okay. So, as I shared, negative $1,153, right? I needed more money now, right? That was definitely true for me. But the difference was that most of us are running around right now constantly saying, I need more money now, I need more money now, I need more money now, right? We're already saying that. The issue is we're not saying it with any actual knowledge or understanding what that means. What does it mean that you need more money? How much more money do you actually need? Because one of the biggest realizations for me was I really came into this work from the place of feeling like there was an amount of money that was going to sort of solve all my problems, right? And it felt like it was some big number, right? But there was some number out there that if I was earning that, then I wouldn't have any worries, right? And the problem was that because there was no specificity for me, I just was running around trying to get more money. So there was a point where I actually had 11 part-time jobs at the same time, okay? And that is absolutely true. I was working at Starbucks, I was answering phones, I worked part-time in a law office, I was bartending, I was catering, I worked morning shifts in a restaurant, I worked part-time for my acting teacher, you know, to get a discount on classes. I babysat, I tutored for the SATs, I walked dogs. Not kidding, okay? These were all of my jobs. And here was the thing. I was still absolutely broke, right? Totally broke. And no time whatsoever to really pursue my acting career. So now here I am, I'm here in Los Angeles, I say I'm pursuing a career, I'm running around with 11 different part-time jobs, I still can't pay my bills, let alone get headshots and be submitting for stuff or any of those things, okay? So knowing that 1,153, what that allowed me to do was to get significantly more powerful about how am I going to earn that money, okay? Because now, instead of just saying, oh, there's this magical figure of money that if I was making it, everything can be fine, I can really look at what will create the freedom that I need to really go after what I want, right? Maybe not to the full extent. We can all admit that we would like to be doing our craft full time, okay? But there is a path to that. There's a path to that. And I have to be willing to accept the responsibility of the path to that, or else I don't really want it. I want it, but I want it without any cost. I want it kind of like my children want, you know, everything. And so I have to actually accept responsibility for what I want. One of the decisions that I made for myself, and I want you to just think about this question, I said, I do not know whether I will make my full-time living as an actor 4 months from now, 4 years from now, or 14 years from now. I also don't know whether when that date comes, it will be forever, because that's the other sort of slight myth out there, right? That I'm earning my full-time living and that will always be so. But here's what I know. I will still be here, whether it is 4 years or 14 years. And that's a question that you really, really have to ask yourself. Because the reason for turnover, the vast majority of the time, is our inability to financially sustain. Our inability, now more than ever, we have got to be out there creating, developing our own projects. That takes resources, which means that we must make that commitment to financial stability in a way that we perhaps never have before, okay? So I look and I say I need more money now, but now I'm clear on what that figure is, okay? So let's say that I discovered that my average monthly expenses, now just so you know, I'm not very good at math, which is another one of those stories that we tell ourselves, so it doesn't have to, if you can do 5th grade math, you can be a financially strong person. But so my scenarios that I'm going to give you are always going to be easy numbers. It's not because they're real, it's just because it's an easy number. So let's say that I discover that I need $4,000 a month to pay my bills, okay? That is 1/3 $1,000 a week, right? If I have 5 days out of the week, that is $200 a day, okay? So what I want for you guys to start practicing is the concept of revenue modeling, okay? And revenue modeling is where we are going to, in advance, start projecting where our money is coming from, okay? And hopefully you're sort of seeing how these pieces fit together. Because the thing is that if I first in part one, where am I right now? If I get clear about where I am right now, then I have the ability to, in advance, once I know that on average I spend $200 on gas for the car and I spend $400 at the grocery store and whatever those things are, I now have the ability, right, to create a system for myself where in advance I can make sure that that is basically what's happening. Who's ever made a budget before, right? And then you sort of make up this budget, and the thing is most of us, we just make it up, right? It's like, I think I should be spending, and we just make up numbers, okay? And so then the budget doesn't work. Well, the reason the budget doesn't work is because you made it up, right? You just created numbers, as opposed to really looking at what has been so for you, and then you can make choices based on what has been so, okay? But the other problem with the budget is that I get to the end of the month and then I look and I say, oops, I blew it there, I blew it there. Oh, look, I was okay there, right? Isn't that what most of us do with budgets? We look back and say, I didn't stick to my budget. Instead, we need to be proactive. We need to, from the front end, say, this is how much I'm choosing to spend, and actually have the systems that keep us in line as we go, so that it isn't a surprise at the end of the month that I've gone over, okay? And it's the same with our income. What we're going to do from now on is, if you have discovered you need $4,000, you are going to actually figure out at the front end of the month, where is that $4,000 going to come from? And it becomes a formula, all right? You need to look at all of the ways you are currently earning money. How many hours do you get at that day job? How many shifts? What's your average income per shift? What are you paid per hour if you're on an hourly? And you need to actually do the math and say, I need $4,000, and that means that this month I would have to have happen A, B, and C, right? Now, it's where we have to admit to some of the magical thinking that we've got going on, right? In that, when I look at the $4,000 that I need, and now I look at the income I have coming into my life that is set, that is within my control, okay? So we have all varying things in this room. Some of you have day jobs or multiple day jobs where there is set income that is coming in. Maybe some of you don't. You are right now making a full-time living from your career, in which case that has an amount of money that is sort of consistently coming in. But for many of us, we're kind of in between, where we've got the day job that is bringing in some money, and then we've got this that is what we are working towards, okay? And it's where we, again, have to really separate the power with which we're working towards it, our belief in what it is we're doing and what it is we're up to, from what is so right now. So if I need $4,000 a month, and from the income I can guarantee I am able to predict $3,200, then I have an $800 shortfall, okay? So now what I have to really do is I have to look at my artistic career and I have to say, am I on average earning that $800 a month? And that's where, again, remember we said separating the emotion from the reality. Is that happening right now on average? If it isn't, then we've got to look at what you are willing to do to make up that extra $800. Because if we're just saying it like it is right now, the $800 a month shortfall is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. My negative $1,153 a month was on a path straight to moving back in with mom and dad. That was the path. However long that was going to take, that was where it was heading, right? We all know that. And yes, was I hoping for the commercial that would make up that shortfall for a year and buy me a little bit more time? Absolutely, right? Or the gig or the job. But one of the worst things, realizations for me, was when I realized that I was driving to every audition instead of thinking about the audition and my work, and instead thinking about what difference it would make in my life financially if I booked it, right? Like I would leave an audition and realize that the whole way there, what had been running through my head was, oh my God, if I book this, I'll definitely have the rent for next month and I can send a big chunk to the Visa bill. And like, guys, we bring that in with us. We bring that in. It shows up. And so instead, if I can truly go knowing that I, as a human being, have handled the financial piece of my life, and this is about walking into the room and showing all of the work that I have done to be a powerful actor or whatever it is that you do, if that is all I bring in, then I have a much greater chance of getting that job, right? So that's the piece that I have to figure out, is how do I forecast in advance? Because if your number is 4,000 and you can only forecast 35 or 32 or 28, then we have to do something about that. That's your point A. We've got to figure out how to get you to point B. Okay? So revenue modeling is going to be a hugely valuable piece for you in terms of really knowing my life is in my control. This is how much I need, and this is how I know it is going to come in. Okay? Because we have two pieces that we can change. We can make adjustments on the spending side, which again, you can only do if you're incredibly clear, like we talked about in the first step, about where the money is going. And you can make adjustments on the earning side. Okay? Some of us will have to do a little bit of both. But now we are powerful because we're no longer pretending that we don't know, right? Or hoping, wishing, praying, whatever it is, that number is going to magically come in, because that's what keeps us completely scared, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, what are the stories? So we talked about the first one, having a day job will interfere with my life as an artist. Scraping by. The only thing I know how to do or am trained to do is my art. You know, as actors, writers, as creative professionals, we are some of the hardest working, most creative, intelligent, resourceful people out there.
Yeah, jobs are not gotten, don't be like, well, I'm not trained to do anything. Right. Your skills, your strengths. Your skills and your strengths. That's what you will get hired on. If you write those down on a list, they're two different things. A skill is something you learn. A strength is just something that you kind of innately are able to do. And you go into job interviews talking about your skills and your strengths. The training part, if they like you, they'll train you for that. So the degree and the education and the training for the jobs that you need to do to make the money, don't worry about it. Skills, strengths, and artists, we got it. We've got them all. We have so many. We're so rich.
And yet we will put ourselves so often in these little itty bitty boxes, right? That say all I can do to make money is my art or waiting tables, right? Like we put ourselves in these really little boxes, and I am awed by the things that over the last, like I've been doing this now for 12 years, that I have seen artists do to create financial strength and stability in their lives. I am awed by the things we come up with, that we have soar and thrive, but that's because of who we are. Yeah. And so we got to step out of these boxes. So.
For sure. So I want to take a minute for you to write the worksheet for this section. I can't because I refuse to because and if I do then what is your story? And feel free, if one of those or four resonate with you, write those down. And then ask yourself, ultimately what I'm afraid of happening is because that's your story, really.
And I'm wondering, is this a place where maybe, how are we? Yeah.
Yeah.
If you feel like you either have a story or a fear that you're willing to share.
Related to, I don't have enough, I need more right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I promise you that someone else has it as well and maybe is struggling to voice it. And so if you'd be willing to or have an interest in coming up, please do.
Yeah, we can have 3 people up behind the mic at this time. But no other questions at this moment. Just I'm listening for your stories and then your fears if you want to share them. Okay. But another thing that we've been talking about is how do we find where we're leaking out this energy? Look for vagueness in your life. Vagueness is like this big, giant hole that energy just goes through. Actors are very afraid that, well, if I take the day job, it will suck my life into the day job. That's because the plan that you have for pursuing your artistic career isn't as specific as a day job where you know when to show up and what to do and and you're going to get paid this much and they'll pat you on the head and all will be great. It's like check, check, check. You can just check those to-dos off your list. Much more concrete and specific. So what you have to do is make the plan, the strategic plan of action about what you're doing over here creatively just as specific as this. And then you will be able to do this and not just be sucked over to somebody else's agenda. And the only reason it feels like a day job will suck me away is also because many people don't have a strategic plan of action of how you're going to use that day job to help you with your artistic career. Because if you know how you're going to use your lunch hours and your times, and instead of giving 110% to the job, I'm going to dial it back to maybe 80%. So I have 20% of that energy left over to put towards my plan of action over here. It's about really getting specific about your life. And that's one of the reasons I'm so interested in strategy. Is it because it saves your energy? And it saves you from drifting off into these other things that you are not here in Los Angeles or wherever else you are to do. You know. So does anybody want to come up and share?
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Kind of like looped it in. So I'm an artist, but I'm also a business project.
Is that mic on?
Hold on 1 second. Is this mic on? Do we know? Give us 1 second, because otherwise the poor live stream people will be like, I'm just here in dead silence.
And we're only going to take the first 3.
Yeah. So sorry, guys.
Thank
we'll do
you.
3, and then if we have time, we'll with the next one. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Project.
All right. Well, my fear is
time. It's like,
Very.
hi, I'm Tony, artistpreneur. My fear is time. That, okay, it's like overstretching yourself, not having enough time to even give to my art after I've ran my business to make my living.
Right, so the fear is, the story you're telling me
Is that I'm
I
going to
don't
run
have
out of
enough
time to get it done because
Right.
I'm not going to have the energy to do it.
Right,
Great.
right.
Hi, my name is Lori. I think part of my fear is deserving. I'm already doing much better than both my mother and my grandmother did. Do I deserve to do better and make so much more money than they did?
Yeah, so it's very much like this, I don't want to outshine my family. I don't want to outshine my tribe. Or am I not worthy? I'm not worthy to shine that bright financially. Something like that, yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth. My fear is that I'm just about working just enough, and that if I were to take the time to find a day job, that then those opportunities would go away.
Okay, let's work with this, Elizabeth, right? So,
Oh.
come back up. So, if I get a day job, my opportunities will go away. So that's the story.
Plus, my agent encourages me not to work, not to have a day job.
That's great. Is your agent paying your rent?
That's what I told him.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Of course your agent doesn't, it's not that your agent doesn't want you to work. Your agent just wants you to be available when they need you.
Yeah.
So the strategy of whatever job you have is, I'm going to drop it. I mean, if I'm really an actor, I will drop that, or grandma will get sick again or die again. And, it's just like, I will do what I need to do over at the day job. And as women, it's like loyalty, and we have all these other factors that we have to work through sometimes to ruthlessly use our day job to support our artistic career. So your agent just wants you to be available.
Yeah.
And if you just go, I will be available when you call.
Yeah.
And then you will figure out how to make that happen. Worst case scenario, you leave your job.
Well, then actually going back to that, what happened was I haven't worked at a day job since 2010. And the thing that I'm finding now, last year mainly when I was trying to find a job, is that people are less willing to hire me because of how, my little increments of work. Because if I got a job, I would quit that job and then, get the acting gig. So I found that people were hesitant to hire me.
And it might be that you can't do those kind of jobs. You're going to have to start to look at what service can I provide for people in a more flexible way on my schedule that will bring income.
Yeah.
Or fib,
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay.
But this whole idea of going back to what was the fear
Yeah.
is that if I have a day job, all my opportunities will go away. So we would look at, well, what are the hidden benefits of believing that story? It's like, well, then, what is my ego getting? What do I not have to do if I believe that? So I want you to excavate those hidden
Well, I
benefits.
get to stay home and I'm a lady who lunches sometimes.
Yeah, because my agent says I can't work, Yeah, and then I want you to flip it to the opposite so that no matter where I'm working or what I'm doing, the opportunities that are meant for me aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And then find proof for that. Look back into your life and find proof for when that was true in other ways. When have the right things come to you no matter what you are doing with all your time?
Yeah.
Did anything wonderful ever come to you when you thought you had no time to make it happen? So gather proof for the opposite and then make yourself that story that doesn't make you afraid. Because here's the other thing about getting jobs. If you come in and don't really want the job, or if you come in with this aura that they can smell on you, even though they don't really know what they're smelling, of like, you're iffy about this, so we don't want someone iffy. But if you can come in with this energy of like, oh, no matter what I do in my life, my opportunities, I'm not going to miss them. Then you can take the job, use the job, do whatever you want, get another job. It's this story here. And here's another thing, is that in America, which is very type A, let's go, work, work, work thing, we have this mythology. And it's very, if you've ever heard of feminine energy and masculine energy, we have both, everyone has both. America uses the masculine energy, do, do, do. If you want more money, you're going to have to make more money. You guys are going to have to go make more money. Make, make, make. But there's actually two tools we have. We have our ability to generate the money, and we have our ability to receive. And one of my coaches once told me that my bank balance is a reflection of my ability and willingness to receive. And I was like, what? Because I always thought my bank balance was an indication of my ability to create money, which was making me depressed because it wasn't as big as I wanted it to be. But then it was like, oh my gosh, how am I blocking help from all different sources, even so much as I realized that a pattern I had when I went over to an organizing job and someone was like, oh, do you want me to get you a glass of water? I'd say no. Even if I was thirsty. I would just, because I was just like, I'm self-sufficient. You don't need, I'm good. I'm all me. And so I just started saying yes every single time someone offered, even if I wasn't thirsty, just to practice receiving.
Right.
Okay.
So there's all these layers. But thank you so much for sharing
And
all three of
I
you.
want to just add quickly to both of
Elizabeth.
you guys, no, actually to
Oh.
both of you guys, which is that, first of all, because it ties into your question about worthiness, right? Really believing that you add enormous value to whatever day jobs or that you are going out and getting. You must truly own that, as opposed to the energy that many of us are walking in with, which is the kind of, oh, I'm just doing this because and hopefully I'll be okay at it. I'm not really trained at it. And also if I have any opportunities, I'm out the door, right? As opposed to, what if, and again, this would just be a potential flip. What if they are so lucky to have you for however many hours they have you? What if your abilities are really so great, what you bring to this organization or you bring to this person is such that after you are there for 6 weeks, this person would bend over backwards to keep you? What if you went in with that energy, right?
Excellent point. And I used to actually even say, when the actor thing would come up in day job interviews, I would say, I can't guarantee how long I'm going to be here, but I will leave you and your company better off for having me when I go, and I will make it an easy transition.
What if you owned that?
Yeah.
And so for you also you were saying this question of value, and I just have to say this, can't you guys look and see your value? Doesn't she just have this presence, this energy that you say she should just, and so those things that are having you say, maybe I shouldn't, I'm outshining, everybody wants you to shine, because with that, all of the people who you're thinking, oh, maybe I'll outshine them or out-earn them, what you will then bring back to them makes everybody's life better.
Yeah.
So I'm just throwing out some of those ways you can flip your stories.
I love
flipping the
it.
story.
No, I actually have something else to say. Remind me of your name again.
Lori.
Lori.
Go
Yes, you
ahead.
may.
We'll let you. We will release you.
We're going to keep Lori on the spot. This is a really interesting thing. There's a book called The Big Leap by Guy Hendricks, right? Guy Hendricks?
Oh, Guy Hendricks, yes.
And he talks about an upper limit problem, which is what he calls. But it's sort of like our set point financially above which we're no longer comfortable. Like, you turn up the thermostat, it gets too hot, we go back to our set point, And so in your family, you kind of have a set point. Your mom was able to rise a little bit above your grandmother, and then you are now above. But here's the thing. When we get out of our comfort zone and go above our limit that's normal for our tribe or for us or whatever, and we get anxious, like, oh, I'm outside of my comfort zone. And so what we do is we soothe ourselves with stories that bring us back to our comfort zone. What you want to be able to do is to start soothing yourself with stories that don't have to bring you under, but that can soothe you in your when you're outside of your comfort zone so that you can stay there and not go back. And I'm going to give a financial example about this because I was just talking with a client of mine who is a storyteller, and this is what she does for a living, and she loves what she did, and she just went out for a week, and she made $17,000 in a week doing what she loved, which didn't feel like work at all. You know, she worked like a couple hours, a couple days of that week. And she was like, oh my God, it was great that I made $17,000, but I just feel kind of bad because like I was even performing in front of, it was a whole audience of teachers, and I know that they don't make hardly that much money, and here I was making all this money. And I said, okay, well, we have a choice because we can pick apart that story to make you feel comfortable and soothe you by going back down, which is really, if we look at all the time you spent telling stories and working up to being a person who gets hired for that week, and then really we factor in all those hours, you probably earned $1 an hour, so don't worry about it. You know, if we all told ourselves that story, we get all the money, it's like, oh, but Willie, when you amortize it, I probably made minimum wage for that job. I just happened to get it all in a week. Okay, but that is a story that makes us feel comfortable with getting it and those teachers not having it, but it brings us down into our financial, right under our normal set point. How about, I said, you also have the choice of telling yourself a story now that makes you feel comfortable with being an artist who earned $17,000 in the course of a week. And if you can soothe yourself with a story, but that one that keeps you empowered up there, that becomes your new comfort zone. And then you can even make more and be comfortable with more, because we have all seen people where the money has come and it's too much, and they tell whatever stories and do whatever actions to get them back under their comfort zone. And that's when it's like, oh, they had all this money, it all went away. How did that happen? So this worthiness, you start to tell yourself stories that can soothe your anxiety but keep you up. And what is the story that you're going to tell you that it's okay for you of this generation of your family to make exponentially more and shine exponentially brighter? So thank you for providing that example.
Great.
So, okay.
I am so sorry. You guys are incredible.
Thank you.
Listen to them because they tell you the truth. That's how I became successful. I'm at the wrong place. I thought I was going to have to make money for my future.
I can't help you with that.
I know.
The thing that I just wanted to share is how I became successful.
Oh.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You guys are great. Thank you.
Thank you. We just had someone leave who was in the wrong event.
I
but
know.
She blessed us all.
She
so now we
blessed us
can
anyway,
continue.
exactly. But this leads us perfectly into the next question of, I suddenly have more money, right? I suddenly have more money. Yes, we're all like, yes, this is what we're here for. Now, here's the thing about the suddenly having more money. First of all, it can and will happen at any time, right? And that is really sort of the wonderful thing about this industry, but also just about life in general. Where you are right now is in no way, if you are doing the work and have the plan, is in no way an indication of where you can and will be tomorrow, right? But the thing is that in many cases, because we aren't doing the first step of figuring out where we are right now, we aren't doing the step of actually planning how we are going to receive. When money shows up, we don't know how to deal with it, okay? And so I talked about one of the joys of what I do. Some of the most painful work that I do is when I sit down with someone who had a huge windfall and now they don't anymore, right? Now it's gone. And we've all, whether it was $500 or $5,000 or $50,000, we have all had that experience of money coming into our lives that kind of went right back out again without any real clarity around how that happened, okay? So one of the things that I just want to share with you is what I call my windfall strategy, okay? Now, first of all, you have to be able to define a windfall, okay? Again, you cannot define a windfall. I know you guys feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but you cannot define a windfall if you don't actually know what you need, if you don't actually know what your averages are. People will say, how could you not have known that you were spending more than an extra $1,000 a month? Easy, right? Because first of all, it wasn't like it was $1,153 every single month, right? That's the problem. The issue is that one month I would book a job or a couple of jobs. There would be what felt like a big amount of money. So let's say that's January, right? I have a great month. And then what would happen is February would happen, and February would be a not so great month, right? But what would I say to myself? I would say, oh, it's okay, because January was a really great month, right? And then March would happen, not so good. But I would still be like, yeah, but January was such a great month, right? And what I wasn't at all, didn't have a handle on, was that November and December had already been not so good, which meant that January was really just making up for that, right? But so that's a part of it, is we have to be able to identify what is truly a windfall. And that will come from having systems that you can absolutely learn to put into place, okay? But when money comes in that is more than what you now know you need, this is how I sort of want you to think about breaking it up, okay? So let's say that I'm that person who has realized I need $4,000 a month, okay? Now, remember that $4,000, I did the work where I have figured out that $4,000, it includes the $100 to $150 for the car repair. It includes the insurance that I only pay twice a year. It includes, for all of you who own homes, the property taxes, right? So that isn't that I actually physically spend $4,000 every month. It includes, for those of you who are actors, the headshots that you take every time you go and get headshots. What does it cost you for the makeup and the clothes and the hair and the shoot and the reproductions and the getting the things set up for all the various online sites? What is that total bill? How often do you do it? Do you do it once a year? Twice, if you're someone who's really changing and growing? Do you do it every 2 years? What is that figure? You've got to divide it by the number of months that you actually will have in between doing it, and that goes into that $4,000, okay? So every month, I am going to be paying the bills that I actually have that month, but then I'm also going to be putting away the numbers that were allocated for those things that don't happen every month, okay? So let's say $4,000, that $3,500 of it is what actually happens every month, and $500 of it is what goes over into my, let's call it planned savings, or other people might call it an emergency account, okay? So now I may have a month, okay, and hopefully you guys can bear with me, because normally I would have a whiteboard and I'd be doing this, but I may have a month where I needed $4,000, because now I'm honest with myself. I know I need $4,000, but I only earned $3,500. So I was just able to pay the bills I needed to pay, But that 500 that is for the car and the insurance and the headshots, I didn't have it that month, okay? So now with my record keeping, I know I owe my planned savings $500, okay? And so the next month, I book a job and I make $8,500, okay? So here's what I'm gonna do. I am going to instantaneously take $4,000, and that is my next month's worth of bills, okay? This is how we start to stabilize. So $4,000 right off the top goes for that figure that I now know I need, okay? $500 goes where? That I owe, right? So $500, I have now kept track, I owe it. So $500 goes to make that up, all right? So this is where we're starting to get powerful, because we're starting to be able to get really responsible. Because what normally happens, that $8,500 feels fabulous, and it is fabulous, right? But oh boy, I start doing all kinds of things that, right? But now I'm gonna have a plan. So $4,000 goes towards the next month, $500 goes because I owe that money. I've got $4,000 left from that $8,500. My strategy is that you would divide that $4,000 into 4 pieces, okay? So if we were gonna do it equally, you would divide that into 4 pieces of $1,000. And this is what you're gonna do with those 4 pieces. Why 4? Because I have 4 places that I want it to go. No. So I'm going to tell you what the 4 are, and then you would see if you need other. Now, here's the thing. For this example, I'm dividing it into 4 equal pieces, okay? Depending on where you are in your life, 4 equal pieces may not make sense. All right, and so one of the things that I always say to my students is, and I love this, call me, let's have a quick session, shoot me an email, let's right? Some of us have done that. Let's make a plan so we can talk it out, so we can really talk out what you're gonna do with the money. But what I say is, in this case, if we were breaking it up evenly, $1,000 would go into your planned savings. Okay, so you would put an extra 1,000 into that planned savings. Now, what is that doing? That is what is now building up that stability, okay? We now call it a planned savings because there was a student in class who rightfully so said, I don't want to call that emergency savings. Like she was like, let's have a stronger name for it. And I like that. I think that's true. Like this idea that it's just for emergencies. No. It's for things you plan. We plan now that our cars are going to break down. We plan that we are going to take trips home because a family member needs us for a little bit or whatever. Like we plan for those things. They're not emergencies. So $1,000 would go into that account, so we start building that up. Ultimately, we'd love to see that account grow to $4,000, which would be a whole month's worth. Right? Then $8,000, then $12,000, and on from there. But that's how we're going to do it. We're going to put these bit chunks into it as they come in. $1,000 would go into what I call your wealth account, okay? And that's something that we'll go deeper into if you do some of the other classes with me. But $1,000, I want you to put it towards your future. Putting it towards money. Your wealth account is going to be money that you are going to learn how to get that money working for you, okay? So that's going to be money where ultimately you'll start buying assets and doing some investing and maybe index funds or mutual funds, but it is money that is about making your money work for you, okay? So 1,000 goes over there. 1,000 goes towards your debt. So if you are someone who is carrying debt, we would need to set up a debt plan, all right? And that goes much deeper than we have time for today. But you would have a debt plan in place. Because no more of this, I make a lot of money and I send a big chunk to the credit card. And then I don't make any money and I run the credit card right back up again. And then I send them a chunk and then I use it and then I send them a chunk. That is so painful, and it's keeping you on this debt roller coaster.
And one of the stories that happens with that is, God, if I just got a bunch of money, they would get it anyway, so.
Right.
And then you're, again, not receiving.
You're not receiving. So we're going to set up a debt plan where you're paying them the same amount every month. We have to get you stable while you're paying back your debt, rather than continually doing this. Then what is going to make that debt plan go faster is that whenever there's a windfall, we're going to send them an extra chunk, okay? So if you have debt, 25% would go to that. If you don't have debt, then you get to divide it up into thirds, right? So that would then turn it into 3 categories, and you would get to divide it up differently. The last quarter would go to something you want. It would go to a celebration, a reward. It might go towards saving for something special that you want, or it may be that you are just going to treat yourself, right? Yes, right? And I understand that there are some people sitting here who are like, oh my God, I can't send 25% to play with to have fun. But you can and you need to, okay? It doesn't have to be. I'm not holding, you hostage that it's got to be the full 1,000. You may decide to break it up where you do 30, 60, 90, and then 10% reward. But you must allocate to reward, because that's where you are truly saying, I did this, right? I am becoming a powerful financial person who rewards myself for my growth. And I think that that's a very important piece of it. So those are my 4, right? Because I feel like it covers your debt, it covers your savings that is your buffer, it covers your future, because I want to end this idea that, well, I saved up all this money and then I spent it when the car broke down, right? No, some of the money that you're saving is for when the car breaks down. There should be no grief or suffering around that. That's what it is there for. There's another piece that's for the future, and some of it is reward, okay? But we have stories, because we always have stories, right?
And when you get money is a great, great time to start being aware of what you're telling yourself about it. It's a wonderful, because some of those stories are like, this is empowering and fabulous, and some of them are like, ooh. And when you don't have, like Miata's windfall strategy, when you don't have a strategic little plan in place for what happens when the ship comes in, and it can come in. I was working with this gal for 3 months. During those 3 months, she was in New York, and she, was working as an actor sporadically. In those 3 months, she became a property owner in New York because a friend of hers died and willed her his property in New York City. Okay, there's a lot. There's a lot to deal with there. And it happened like that and completely unexpectedly. So you don't know the windfalls that you will get, but they're out there. And it's a great thing to start examining. But if you don't have a strategic plan in place, you can't maximize it. And that's what getting ahead is about, is maximizing. You might not waste it. You might not lose it. You might not just throw it, and spend it all on a big party. I'm not saying we're not at all saying you don't know what to do with it. But this is really about empowering you to maximize it and really being aware of how you keep money out and all the energy you hemorrhage when it comes in. What should I do with it? Blah, blah, blah. If you have a plan, then you just boop, 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 right, and celebrate, But it's this energy hemorrhaging that doesn't allow you to really maximize this resource that just came to you. And those are the adjustments that make the difference in people's lives. And that's why when clients come to me very frustrated, and to you, I'm doing all the right things, I'm pursuing my career, I'm being a really good citizen, why am I not ahead? It's like, because there's stuff up here that's working against you. Those kind of stories. I think we have to wrap it up,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And so, so I want to, obviously, first of all, so now we've had some practice with what you do with these stories, right? And have fun really looking also at the stories around the windfall. Really be honest about that as well, so that you're ready. You're truly ready for when that money comes in.
And I just remembered this fabulous quote. And a windfall could be the $10 bill you find on the ground, too, by the way. What is your reaction to that?
Right.
My mother-in-law will not pick up a penny. Oh, money. And I'm like, we haven't gone into what that's all about, but, but I'm always like, look, a reminder of my
Right.
wealth, you know. But there's this great quote from Mike Dooley that says, you're right, life is not fair. The deck is stacked in your favor. So often we notice what's not fair. We were overcharged for that. They stole that from me. But what about all the times when you find the money? They don't charge you for that thing. It's like noticing that and being grateful for that and realizing that life is unfair can work in your favor sometimes.
Right.
Just the fact that we're here born in the United States and we are in Los Angeles pursuing our dreams, that's so unfair for a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Kristine said at the beginning, she said that hopefully some of what we gave you today is transformational content, right? Hopefully you got at least a couple ideas, some things that you say, I haven't thought about it that way. But the important thing is to really recognize the difference between transformational content and transformation, okay? What is going to create transformation? And here we are in November, and I love this time because I sit here in front of you and I think to myself, next year, there are so many amazing things that are going to happen for the people in this room. So many things, and we would so love to hear about them. And how are you going to leave and now actually create transformation, all right? It requires, generally, once you've got the information, it requires action, it requires accountability, it requires support, right? A sense that you're not doing it alone. You guys see, we've given you in your packets the wide number of resources that are available out there for you. You can find Kristine. She has got more free resources. It will blow your mind, some of the just completely free. She's got an actor's library, so many resources in there. Also, the fund, the Actors Fund, who brought you this program today. If you look at the last sheet, you will see that we have a financial wellness program. It's a whole program, and I see some of you are familiar faces, and you've either gone through one segment of it or you've gone through all the segments of the financial wellness program. But for those of you who haven't yet, I really want to encourage you. We do Budgeting Nuts and Bolts, which is a single session class. We then have Managing Cash Flow for Artists, which is 6 weeks where we really dive into this work. Money in the Performing Artist, where you will look at your stories. You will really have the opportunity to dive into those and to transform them. And then we have what I love, which is our Managing Cash Flow Graduate Group, which is really where we support each other. We've got a book club. We read financial books as well as other sort of mindset books throughout the year. We talk about them. We answer questions. We deal with challenges, because this is a road. Your choice to have a relationship with your money is essentially a commitment that will require you to go forward and say, I am now a person, I am an artist, I'm a creative, I'm an entertainment professional who has a relationship with my money. And what probably the biggest thing that I can impart to you is you do not have to have that relationship alone. This is a tough town in many ways, but there is also so much available for you if you will just decide to grab it. So I want to personally thank you
my pleasure.
for coming and being with us today. Thank you so much. And I thank all of you for taking the time and coming to be here, okay? Hopefully.
And you're amazing.
Oh, thank you. Hopefully, we will have the opportunity to work with you more on your journey. Kristine and I will be here for a little bit longer to answer any individual questions that you've got. But thank you guys and have a wonderful, wonderful
Thank you.
weekend.